Okay, everybody, let's stop. Again, I appreciate you coming. We're about to get into the Volkswagen Forum. We're very, very fortunate to have a gentleman come down from Great Plains Aircraft out of Omaha. He flew in. This gentleman here is the expert in the field. He's a real straight shooter, and I highly recommend him. And again, I appreciate you having come down. Steve, they're all yours.
Okay. Thanks a lot for inviting me down. We were here, I think, 2 years ago, and last year we were, I think, in Arizona, doing a few other things, so it's good to be back. Wish there was more airplanes here, but I imagine the weather has something to do with that this week. Yeah. Oh well. Anyway, the subject is Volkswagen engines and their applications to the Dragonflies, Quickies. Easy way to start it out. If anybody has any questions to get it going, that usually keeps it rolling along. If not, I always find plenty of things to talk about, but it seems at the end we always run out of time. We'll be around probably till about 1:30 this afternoon before we have to head back, so if you see me, if we don't get something answered here, just holler when the forum's done after lunch. Rather than talk over the airplane here, we'll wait till he's gone.
There's any difference between the metallurgy of the red master head, the original head, and the Volkswagen head?
No. Better.
My question, I mentioned this a while ago, the possibility of making a redundant system for the dual electronic ignition, and also to, at the same time, avoid this problem that Ted Gibbons had where he burned the switch. Do you have any ideas on that?
Dual electronic ignition, I myself have never been, I guess you'd say, a fan of it, specifically for that reason. On all of our engines that we do, if you have dual ignition, we use a magneto for one system and electronic for the secondary. Not being an electrician, I honestly couldn't tell you how to have a fail-proof system so that if one quit, the other one keeps on working. You don't burn up the switch. Sure, there's some other people in here that would have some answers to that. I'm not one of them, no.
See Bob Knuckles.
See Bob Knuckles, huh? Okay.
Bob Knuckles.
Yeah, in the back. The ultimate VW motor for Dragonfly? I would say if you had the dollars to spend, probably the Type 4. It's a lot more durable engine as far as the engine case is than the Type 1 is. Weighs about 11 pounds more. It's made out of an aluminum zinc alloy, which is pretty much a bulletproof material as far as wear and tear. You will probably never break the case as far as cracking in the back like we see in the Type 1 cases, and you will probably not crack the case on the front of the case where the oil pressure galley is down to the oil sender, even if you took the thrust up at the front. It's a very durable engine case.
I have a 1835 Happy
okay.
right now, and I'm looking to go into the Type 4. What kind of problems can I expect?
Biggest problem you're going to have is weight. Beyond that, you shouldn't have any problem converting it other than your weight and balance. The Type 4 is probably going to weigh 30 pounds more than what your 1835 does.
How do I know if I've got a Type 1, 2, 3, or 4?
How do you know if you have a Type 1, 2, 3, or 4? Generally speaking, the Type 1 and Type 3 are associated with the Volkswagen Beetle type cars, those type of engines. The Type 2 and the Type 4s are in the Volkswagen Bus, or the early 914 Porsche. The biggest difference between the motors, if you're looking to identify them very easily, is a Type 1 Beetle engine. The exhausts are on the ends of the cylinder heads. On a Type 4 engine, they're on the bottom of the cylinder heads. That's the simplest way to tell. Yeah?
Steve, I'm interested in what your thoughts are on carburation. What is the best carburetor for the Type 1?
Well, the best carburetor, I would say, is probably, at the moment, the Ellison throttle body. It's the most expensive, but then it's one of those things you get what you pay for. You can have a few problems with them. Once in a while, you'll have to have them send it back and have the slide bar rejetted, so to speak. But for the most part, you stick it on, you adjust it, and you go flying. They do require fuel pump, at least they say they do. Generally, a lot of guys that own KRs have a bypass system in them so they can use gravity feed, and in flight, switching from one system to the other, they can see no difference in any of the temperatures.
Now, if you have an engine that's not really running smoothly, when you're having a problem throttling down the engine quitting, and I'm using a super positive, is that what the problem is?
Oh, I would say overall probably. It's the posted carburetor is very sensitive to mixture as far as how it affects your engine, and small adjustments do great things in the carburetor. I mean, the arm on it, you can just barely move it on some of them, and it'll really make a big difference in the way the engine runs. But if you're throttling your engine back and the engine's quitting, the first thing, are you using avgas always on it? Using avgas. And what size engine is it?
Happy system, one that you,
But what size is it?
that happy system,
Is it an 1835? Okay.
the one you put a crank in.
Okay. Yeah. If it keeps wanting to quit when you throttle back, it's usually mixture related.
Now, they had a idle adjustment screw on those that it comes loose sometimes. If that closes down, it'll flood out ribs. Or if it's turned the other way up, it can run loose and it'll run lean and eventually come out far enough to bind up the slide.
On the idle mixture screw? That was on a spring on the side of it, wasn't it?
Or get a screw with
You were talking about the needle hold screw? The screw that holds the needle from rotating?
No. There's a little hole in the side for your idle mixture.
Oh, in the slide itself.
Inside of the slide.
Right.
And there's a set screw with a point on it
Yep.
down into that hole.
Yep.
And there's no means of locking that unless you put
Okay.
in Loctite or you have a nylon screw.
Yeah. They do make a nylon tipped set screw that you can buy to put in those also.
And that would be a very good investment.
Yeah.
But they do need it.
Yep.
Yeah, I have a 2100 Redmaster, 0 time. What would you recommend I do that before I apply?
Revmaster overall, I think it's a fairly decent motor. The only thing I do different to them when we get them into the shop is we reduce the compression ratio quite a bit. We go, stock Revmaster is about 9.6 if it's not turbocharged. We take them down to 8-to-1. It takes about a 98,000 shim under the cylinder to do it.
What am I losing horsepower?
Actual horsepower, I really don't know. RPM-wise, you're probably going to lose 100.
And the heads are all right, I mean? Just the valve problems?
Most of the valve problems on Revmaster engines, at least that I've seen, are caused because the compression ratio is so high and it just beats the valves to death. In theory, 100 low lead avgas can support about 9.6-to-1 compression ratio, and most Revmaster engines that we've worked on anyway are about 9.5. I mean, it's at the absolute max. Generally, you know, as they say with like electricity, don't exceed 80% of your load capacity, and I would say overall, at least for the VW motors, the same thing's probably pretty true for octane ratings. Which is why if you stay around 8-to-1, you're doing a pretty good job. Yeah.
How's the 100 octane ammunition gas compared to pump gas? Is it the same octane rating?
There's a lot of debate about that, and I personally don't know if it's based on the same octane RON rating or whatever they use to actually classify it. There is a big difference in the way it affects the performance of your engine. That there's no question about.
They run that around like 104 pump gas then?
The biggest problem most people see with car gas, especially I would imagine in the Dragonfly Q2 type aircraft, is with all the stuff that's in car gas anymore, even if your fiberglass fuel tank is supposed to be compatible with it, there's certainly huge question marks, especially with some of the accidents, especially in the Dragonfly type airplane with the fuel filters plugging up and stuff like this from the gas tanks, that I think I would really steer away from car gas in it. And the other big problem you have with car gas is our cowlings on the airplanes are very compact and very small, and the heat buildup in the cowling with car gas is just phenomenal. And if you've never experienced vapor lock while you're flying with car gas, it sure makes that old heart, it's like on the cartoons, you know, with the rabbit, the heart, yeah, it really does. Yeah. stick with avgas, and at least that problem will be cured. Yeah.
What about retrofitting a mechanical driven fuel pump to the Type 1?
Retrofitting the fuel pump to the Type 1, the only company that I know does that is Limbach, and it's not a retrofit. We do not have a casting that goes on the side of it. On the Type 4 engine, now it is on the side of the case. On the Type 1, the only place we can put one is on the top. Most people don't want to do that. There was a guy a couple of years ago down in Kentucky or Tennessee that I thought belonged to the Dragonfly group that was doing a conversion like that. He was in the market. I don't know, wonder whatever happened to him. I don't know. Chris somebody, wasn't it? Chris Barber? Yeah. I think his name was. Anyway, he had something figured out that you could do to the side of the case and stick it on, but I don't know whatever happened to it. Yeah?
Steve, another quick question here. I was 1835 happy again, and I tossed between going to the Type 4, but I also want some altitude performance. The engine runs great, extremely low hours. It only has less than 30 hours on the engine. Could run a little motor, but I'm looking for altitude performance. I was debating between going up to 2100, or also maybe going to a Type 4 motor, or possibly putting a turbocharger on it. What about turbocharging this motor? What do you think about that?
I'm personally not a fan of turbochargers for the VW and aircraft use. If you all remember, those of you that do, back in the early, I should say back in the late 70s, early 80s, RevMaster was real big into turbocharging on the Q2s, and some of the other aircraft as well. The later models may have had a wastegate, but the earlier models did not, and the boost was controlled solely by the throttle. And you can imagine what a great temptation it is if, 30 inches is great, 35 inches would be super, and it is momentarily. We get asked that question a lot. I want to add a turbocharger in my motor to increase the performance, and the only purpose of the turbocharger, in my opinion, you can all have your own opinion, in an aircraft application is to maintain whatever the horsepower of the motor is at altitude, period. And using it, I would say, no, I wouldn't do it. But if you want to do it for that purpose, you probably get along and do it fine. It's just going to add a whole lot more heat in the car.
Sorry about this.
Turbo City out in California is probably the largest supplier. They don't manufacture them, they sell them. But as far as coming up with a manifold and those kind of things for it, you're going to either have to find one that's existing off like an old RevMaster or something, or manufacture your own.
In your own opinion, say the 1835 with a turbo, is the 2100 probably perform just as well at altitude?
No. No. At altitude, you're probably going to get, even out of a 2180, at altitude, you're talking like 10,000 feet or something. And you're probably going to, I don't know what the actual horsepower would be, but it'd probably be like 50, 45 horse or something up there. It'd be way down. Yeah?
On the Volkswagen, with the happy case, can that be mounted two different ways on there, with the starter up or the starter down?
On none of the manufactured accessory cases, Happy, RevMaster, Duty, Mosler, anybody, you cannot just take the case and switch it. The bottom two bolt holes on the VW case are roughly 8 1/4 inches apart. The top holes are about 8 inches apart. You can use the same pattern, but the holes have to be machined for whichever way you want the starter to go. It's not a matter of just switching it. Right. Exactly, yeah. You just have to order it whichever way you want it.
What are your thoughts on using 75 horsepower heads?
On 75 horsepower head? On a RevMaster? Well, I guess in all honesty, from what I've seen, I don't see how they do it. I don't see any difference. There's a little larger valve size, and they're a little ported and polished, but how they get 10 horse out of it, I don't know. I can't see where it makes 10 horsepower difference.
I tried it actually, and it made a hell of a difference.
On yours it did? Yeah. Okay.
What was the question?
Well, the question was the RevMaster 75 horsepower head to give you another 10 horsepower. And to me, I can't see much difference where they get the 10 horsepower, and the other gentleman said it made a big difference on his, so.
Part of it was the larger valves, and then part of their upgrade was also larger intake manifold, intake tubes going up, and just the increased airflow, and I just go buy a new prop rather than just go right off 3,800 RPM. So it did make a big difference.
Yeah, good.
One question I had on the RevMaster as well was the thrust bearing location. That was the final demise of my RevMaster, with all the cracks radiating away, and it actually broke the journal.
Yep. Yep.
So I was wondering when you get them in the shop, what you do about that, or whether detuning them to reduce that thrust.
Reducing the compression ratio certainly helps the wear and tear in the engine case a tremendous amount. All the older RevMaster cases are also made out of AS41 magnesium. The newer ones are AS21, which is a little more durable alloy. But as far as solving that problem, that is probably the main thing we see in a RevMaster motor when it comes in. That's why they come in, is because they crack the case right there. And unless you change the entire crankshaft, flywheel assembly, and all that, there's no way to solve it, because that's all kind of one unit built to that case, and there's just no way to take the end plate on the back of the crankshaft. So you're, and the reality of it is everybody, says it's easy. You got to throw the case away after, I don't know how many hours you had on it. 300, 400, pardon? 100, that's not a lot. But even say the case goes 200 hours before that happens. I mean, 200 hours for most people is a good couple of years flying, at any rate, 3 or 4 years. A new engine case costs roughly $500. If you do the work yourself, you're going to have maybe another $100 in parts and bearings and that kind of stuff. So the case lasts for 200 hours, 4 or 5 years, and to amortize that over that much flying, well, yeah, it's an expense, but what do you want?
Try that with a Continental or
Yeah, I mean, in that sense, it's a throwaway case, which it really is anyway. The engine case is never meant to be like an aircraft case that goes a lifetime. It has a very specific life to it, a specific number of cycles, because it is made out of magnesium, and it is meant to be replaced. So it just doesn't last as long with the thrust taken up there. Yeah.
We read about the effect of torsional vibration, they particularly do with reduction gears and that. Could you comment on the effect of that on that?
I really can't. I don't know much about torsional vibration as it relates to the VW at all. We all use the flywheel. We don't have an external dampener that's attached to the flywheel like some of the, it's real popular right now with the RV6 guys and RV4 guys, or some company that makes a harmonic dampener you stick on the prop over the flywheel. It's supposed to smooth out something. I honestly don't know what. We've never used it. Now on the Type 4 engines, I know more weight on the flywheel helps the motor. There's no question about that. We don't machine the flywheels down as light as we do on the Type 1. They're about 3 pounds heavier. And it smooths that motor out a little bit. But as far as what, I'm sure we all understand it's supposed to smooth out the power pulses so it's not, it's not banging against it so hard. But beyond that, I don't know. Yes?
The guy we know who's involved in racing cars, he told us that the guys running the Type 1 VWs with an oil slinger in them, and there is no seal on the original design, and we're kind of wondering, he said there's never been a problem with leakage.
Well, there's a difference on the Type 1 VW engine. That's right, there is no seal on the end of it, although many of the off-road guys use the seal, sand seal, to stop stuff from getting in rather than to stop oil from getting out. But what the Type 1 engine also has is on the hub that goes on there, it has reverse threads on it to sling the oil back into the motor.
Oh, it's on the pulley?
It's on the pulley.
We don't have that anymore.
That's why we use the seal. Yeah. Yeah.
A couple quick questions about the cases again.
Uh-huh.
The Type 1 and I believe Type 3 cases are magnesium. Is that correct? And then the Type
Right.
4 cases are aluminum?
The Type 4 is aluminum zinc.
Right. I guess with magnesium you have a little bit of a fire hazard. time too, don't you? I mean, does this thing burn, when they start burning, they don't stop burning?
Well, if your airplane ever caught on fire and got hot enough, I suppose it could ignite at some point, but I mean, in normal use, it's not gonna. I know if you're ever in there grinding on the case, making the fine dust with your Dremel tool, you don't want to make a spark around it because it's just like a 4th of July sparkler. Yeah, it just burns and there's no way to put it out virtually till it's done burning. Yeah, but I mean, in normal use, it's not a...
Say you had an engine fire, I'm just curious. I don't know.
If you had an engine fire, I doubt if your case would burn up.
Okay, that's smart.
No. It's kind of like gasoline, you know, you got to have the fine vapors to get it going.
And you do have aluminum cases that you offer, aircraft cases, I believe,
For the Type 4. Yeah.
Nobody's cast the Type 1 in aluminum yet?
Well, there are several companies that do it. Scat Machine, or Scat Enterprises has a Type 1 case. They're sold for about $1,200. Powder Machine, I guess, has a case, and I don't know what it sells for. It's machined out of
About 1,000.
about 1,000. And that's a 4-piece case versus a 3-piece case.
It's more like a block. It's
Yeah.
really a case.
Right.
How much is the Type 4 case?
Type 4 cases are about $500. But it's the rest of the motor that's expensive. The case is comparable to what a Type 1 is, but the rest of the engine is...
What would a Type 4?
The Type 4 engines, outright, they sell for about $68. It's a lot more expensive engine. A Type 1 you have for about $5. Yeah. The Type 4, what's it sell for? They're about $6,800. One of the most popular ways we have guys do Type 4 to shave some of the costs on them is they'll go out and find a good Type 4 case, or an engine actually, and we can send it out and have it remanufactured, the case and the heads, connecting rods, that kind of thing, and upgrade it. Then you can make a 2,600cc engine out of it for roughly the same price you'll have in a Type 1 for about $5,000. Doing it that way, it's not so bad, but you know, to buy them outright, $6,800, it's getting, for most people, it's kind of pricey. Yeah.
The Mossler 82 horse engine that they recently put out, is that
Uh-huh.
a Type 4 case?
No, it's a Type 1 case.
Type 1.
Mm-hmm.
About as maxed out as we can get, Steve.
Yeah, a Type 1 case, it really is, yeah. Yeah, when you go up to 94 jugs and 82 stroke, you can go up to 86 stroke actually in a Type 1 case, but you have to change the connecting rods to keep them more compact, so you have some material left on the top of the case when you clearance it, and also so you have some material left on the camshaft when you clearance it. So most people don't do that. And it also makes it a lot more expensive when you go with the smaller connecting rods. You're going to have, God, $500-600 just in the connecting rods. Yeah.
Are the tops the same on the Type 1 or Type 4? Or
Or the top.
the cylinders?
Are the cylinders the same? No, the cylinders on a Type 4, depending upon the size you want to use, in a stock Type 4, they're 94 or 96 millimeter. On the Type 1, of course, the stock is 85.5. On the Type 4 engine, we take the bore up to 103 millimeter, and on the Type 1s, they're generally taken up to 92 millimeter.
Can the heads interchange?
It's an airplane.
What about back to the cases?
Yeah.
Run them in cars, you used to get them to crack behind the number 3 cylinder. And I understand that that's not quite the problem with the airplane engine. It's maybe just deep setting the studs or on the number 3.
You're talking about Type 1 cases again? On, as a general rule, I can certainly tell you this, the smaller you keep the engine to stock, the longer it's going to last. The 1600 is going to last longer than 1835, and 1835 is going to last longer than 2180, guaranteed. It's just a matter of arithmetic, cycles, heat, and all that stuff. It's going to be have more life, but we still see cases cracked behind the number 3 back there, and on the 2180s we have a little piece of magnesium we weld in there to reinforce that area. On our own engines, we don't see them crack like where the Rev Masters do up front, but we still see them crack in the back. And the other famous place they crack is on the inside of the case, up on the number 3 main bearing web, where the main oil galley goes, from where it goes this way to where it goes up to the top of the case. If you're taking your thrust like on the Rev Master right there, that's the famous place they like to crack, is right there in that main oil galley, because that's the weakest part of the case right there. That's where they're going to crack at. Yeah.
You buy a Type 4 engine in the junkyard.
Yeah.
What are the chances of getting a decent case in it?
When you buy a Type 4, you're going to get a decent motor. I would say generally, yeah. The Type 4 case, if there's no cracks in it, if it looks decent, if you can turn it over, because it's like an aircraft case in the sense that it does not have a finite lifespan to it. It really can go on for, I won't say forever, but you know, it probably has a lifetime of 5 times what a standard Type 1 case does. Oh, exactly, and we buy used engines from people, so we always have a supply of them too, that we pick up around the country, guys send us. Yeah, on a Type 1 engine, and I myself would not pursue the junkyard method of using a Type 1 engine at this point in time anymore. The Beetle has been out of production. Well, not out of production. It hasn't been imported into this country since '79, I believe. Pardon? I know, but not the Beetle motor. And, you know, it's been, what, 13, 14 years since '79? I don't remember. It's a long time. At any rate, if it's in a junkyard today, unlike back in the early 70s, when in the early 80s when the Volkswagen was probably more popular than it is today, when you could go to the junkyard and find a decent used motor that had like 20,000 miles on it, and it was in a wreck that you could take out, and it still had useful life in it left to convert and run. That really isn't an option anymore. If it's in a junkyard anymore, it's there for a very specific reason. It's junk, period. Yeah? The last year they manufactured the Type 4? Well, I'm going to guess it was 82. Yeah, it's been out for a while too. Yes and no. In fact, not very often, but occasionally we still get new cases for it. And new cylinder heads are available for it again. Crankshafts I haven't seen new except from VW. But as far as replacement parts for it, all the replacement parts are available for it. There's just a lot of them you have to buy. Like if you want some of the hardware like cylinder head studs, things like that, you cannot buy them from aftermarket suppliers. It's still a VW dealer type item, and you know, you pay through the nose for them. Yeah?
So the Type 4 cases you're using are new cast casings? Then?
No, they are not. The Type 4 cases we use are used reconditioned cases. Yeah. Yeah.
If the guy was going to build up a Type 4, do you offer a kit for some, you know, I mean, where a guy could go to the junkyard and possibly find one that might be good?
Yeah, sure do.
What roughly does that run?
If you wanted to do a Type 4, you find yourself a good used core. We've got 2 different kits to convert them into two different sizes that are the most popular. One's 2400 cc, which is 71 strokes by 103 bore, and the other one's 2600 cc, which is 78 strokes by 103 bore. The 2400 cc kit, I think, is around. That's not that expensive. I think it's like $1,800 because you can use most of the stuff in the motor. For the 2600 cc kit, because you have to get the crankshaft, which is the expensive part, it's about $3,400.
Is there a lot of machine work there?
There's not a whole lot of machine work in the engine. You have to machine the case, you have to machine the cylinders, you have to machine the cylinder head. The top of the Type 4 has a very tall oil tower on it that has to get machined off and put a plate on it. And then the nose of the case has to get machined out for a bearing. That's really about it. There's no internal case work as far as machine work that can't be done with the Dremel tool. When the piston is all the way down, right where the piston wants to hit the case, you have to relieve that. But that can be done with the Dremel tool. It's a no-brainer. You just do it when you assemble the motor. Yeah.
Do you know of a shorter oil cooler that can hold on top of the Rev Master than standard oil pipe?
No, I don't.
Can you repeat the question for me?
Oh, the question is, do we know of a shorter oil cooler that can bolt on top of the motor that is not as tall as the standard VW cooler? And I do not know. There's two types of coolers you can use. You can use either the Type 1 cooler or the Type 4 cooler. Both cooler fits in the same spot. The Type 4 cooler is probably an inch taller than the Type 1.
But you can remote the coolers too.
You can remote the coolers, that's correct.
Eliminate that height.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a picture where the VW type part, the cases and things like that, going away through attrition.
Oh, that's not true at all. I'm sorry if I painted that picture. It's, the Type 4 cases are not new manufactured anymore. You can probably buy them from Volkswagen, but as far as aftermarket people that would supply like all the Type 1 stuff, it's not available because it's either a VW dealer item or they're not made. I really don't know what the case is, but there's a zillion of them out there that you can still pick up. On Type 1 parts, because the Beetle is still the most popular car, it's either in Mexico, Brazil, or both, I'm not sure which, there's no problem with getting new parts for those at all. New cases, new heads, pistons, all that stuff's available brand new. Some of it we don't want to use brand new. For example, the new crankshafts that Volkswagen Brazil makes, I would not use one. It's not a high quality forging. They weigh about 4 pounds less than the old German crankshafts. And if you analyze one, there's a whole lot of sulfur in it. So even though it's 1045 steel and it's a forging, it's like got huge pockets of Swiss cheese about all I compare it to. It's like Claude's Buggy's old cast crankshafts. It's just not a high quality crankshaft. It's probably great for a car. It's cheap to do, but for an airplane, it's not a...
Well, I guess what I was trying to ask is if you were going to be developing...
Are we developing other engines? No. No. Our business is pretty much the VW engine business, and parts that go with that and new parts we develop for engines based on that we're involved with, but as far as developing a new motor completely, no. We're not doing that at all. Nor are we involved with Subarus. There's other people that do that too. Yep.
There was a time when not too long ago, when the Brazil case wasn't up to snuff either, and just pressure, I guess, changed that situation. So the cases are at least acceptable now.
Yep.
You see the same thing happen with crankshafts? Quality is going to improve on the track?
I haven't seen it with crankshafts. You are correct. There used to be a time when you did not want a case made out of Brazil. You wanted it made out of Mexico versus a Brazilian case. But that's switched for two reasons. A, the cases are better, and they're no longer made in Mexico. So thank God it was good timing. Yeah.
How would you feel about buying a factory remanufactured 1835?
What size?
1835.
A factory manufactured like by who?
VW.
Like actual VW, like from a car dealer? From a VW dealer?
Yeah.
Well, I would have a few questions I'd ask before I bought it. I would ask, primarily, is the crank case a new case or a remanufactured case? If it's a remanufactured case, I would not buy it. And I would also ask the same thing of the cylinder heads, if they're remanufactured versus new. Again, if they're remanufactured, I would not buy it. If the case is new and the heads are new, that means that probably the piston and cylinders are also. The only used parts in it are probably the crankshaft and connecting rods, maybe the rocker arms, but I doubt if that's what you're buying.
What's the predominant vehicle that Type 4 came in? The guys in the Dodge Crown?
The predominant vehicle the Type 4 was in, which was the old 914 Porsche, which was a 1700 and 1800 and 2-liter, and then the other one, of course, the most popular one was the Volkswagen Bus.
Was the bus?
Yeah, it started in 71, I believe, ran through 82.
Now, isn't that the block that has the 3 holes on the back for the cross beam or something?
Jeez, I have no idea. I've never seen one in a car. I don't know.
Well, there's mounting bolts on the back of the block, on the case on the...
Well, the Type 1 and Type 4 both have mounting stud holes. I don't know what you mean. Do you mean on the pulley end?
Yeah.
Yes, it did. It has 4 studs. Right. Yep.
All kinds of questions. This intrigues me. What's the difference? You said before there was a weight differential.
30 pounds.
30 pounds more?
Yep. Type 1 typically is going to weigh, with the starter and an alternator all set to go on the airplane, right around 170 pounds. Where the Type 4 is going to weigh about 192.
What about size difference?
Size difference of a Type 1 to Type 4. A Type 4 is 1 inch longer in length, but it's a ½ inch narrower in width. The cylinder heads, however, are deeper. They're probably an inch to an inch and a quarter deeper than they are in a Type 1. So you'd have to look at that at your cow lane to see if it would clear that. I think it would on most Dragonflies anyway.
The advantage of having the exhaust pipes come off the bottom will help a little bit on the length. You know, because we have to allow howling space and even
Down in there.
Type 1 can bring the
Yeah.
exhaust pipes out at a pretty sharp angle.
Yeah. Type 4 is kind of nice for that and a few other features. One of the things I like the best about it is it has hydraulic lifters that are VW factory bolt-on. There's no machine work or anything that's required, and they can be adapted to all the old 1.7 and 1.8 liter solid engines. The 2 liter Type 4s did have quite a few problems with hydraulic camshaft scuffing. So if you're going to use a hydraulic cam in it, like what we do, we get ours from Weber, and they make a lifter that's compatible with their camshaft that's supposed to eliminate that problem, and we haven't seen anywhere to date, so evidently it does. Yeah?
I had heard one time that Volkswagen was going to make a water-cooled platform for a van.
No, they do.
Water bottle.
Yeah, it's called a water boxer. I have not, at least from a commercial standpoint, because it's not a very popular engine. And it'd be kind of like the Rotax, what is it, the 618 or the 912, I forget which one is. It's kind of half water-cooled, half air-cooled thing.
Yeah, it just tends to think.
Yeah, and it's, I don't know. The biggest problem engines have, all alternative engines in aircraft use, is you got to have a market for what you're doing. And when you have an engine like that, it's not a proven engine. There's not a lot of them out there. There's no ready market for the motor, where with the Volkswagen, some people like them, some people hate them, some people are neutral. But there's a few things we know about the Volkswagen engine that we don't know about others. We know what the problems with the motor are. We know the history of the motor. We know the advantages of using them, which is why most people are interested, because it's what's in your pocketbook. And with all the other engines out there that are up and coming, even the Subaru, for example, it's probably going to be a great little motor, but how many airplanes can you all name for me that it's currently being used in as an original design? Yeah, that many. Two? Oh, because I don't know of any. All right. And that's the biggest problem that engines have. If there's no product for the motor, why bother? And as of now, at least to my knowledge, the Subaru, it just seems to be a pretty good motor. There's not a great number of them in use, but they all have to be adapted to something. There's not a specific aircraft that is designed from the firewall forward backward using the Subaru. Where with the Volkswagen, it's been around for a long time. Most of us have played with one at one point in our lives, either in a car or in an airplane. And it has a history. It's something we at least know something about, whether you love it or not, or you hate it. And with all the other engines out there, the V6 aluminum blocks and all the stuff you see at Oshkosh and Sunderfin all the time, yeah, they're probably great motors and they'll probably work, but as far as being something commercially that somebody's going to do, until there's an airplane that's designed around what they're doing, it's going to be a popular airplane, the engine's not going to be a success from a commercial standpoint of view. Maybe great for the individual owner, but nobody's going to get rich on it. Yeah?
Speaking of value, Cindy, I have a question for you in regards to, I have a 73 914 2-liter block. It's real hard core to get, real tough motor to get. And I was thinking, in terms of reliability versus power, keeping the 2-liter stock, size-wise for and with the bigger heads and that type of thing. How would you think I should go with that?
Well, the same size motor, it would probably do not a whole lot more than what you have right now. That engine has a 71 millimeter stroke with, I think it's 96 bore. It's either 94 or 96 bore. Right now you've got a 69 by 92, so you only really got 2 millimeters in stroke difference. Yeah, and there's more bore difference, of course, but we get most of our power for takeoff and climb out of stroke, not from bore. Most of our speed forward wide comes from bore. And with the additional weight of the motor, it'd be a very durable motor, but you're not, I don't think you're going to gain anything as far as performance. You probably lose something.
That motor and go up to 24 or
At least I would add the jugs to it.
okay, great, thanks.
Yep. Yeah.
If you're going hunting for a core, which is the best one to go looking for?
Hunting for a core?
For a Type 4.
For a Type 4, it really doesn't matter. If you find a 1.7, a 1.8, or a 2-liter, we ourselves like to use a 1.7. The early 1.7 and 1.8 cylinder heads, they had a larger valve in them. All the 2-liter engines were fuel injected, and they had to downsize the valves in that engine. Also, some of the 2-liter motors had a problem. Oh, I don't remember if it was the valve guides or the seats coming loose in the engine, in the cylinder heads. It's one or the other. On the however side, most of the 2-liter engines you're going to find are going to be newer, and you definitely, if you're going to go up to a 2600cc engine or a 2400cc engine, you want the connecting rods in a 2400cc engine, you want the crankshaft in a 2400cc engine. In a 2600 engine, you want the connecting rods. The 2-liter connecting rods are at a premium. They're not the easiest things to come by as far as core, because there weren't that many 2-liter motors made. And if you don't have a set, it adds quite a bit to the cost of a motor if you've been doing it yourself. So, I mean, it's kind of a...
So what you want is both of them. You want
Yeah.
1700 heads and a 2-liter.
Yeah, if you're at a junkyard, tell the guy you're taking that one, oh, that looks like a piece of junk there, why don't you throw that in with it, kind of thing. You know? I doubt if they'll do that because they know what they got, but it's worth a try. Yeah, 2-liter connecting. If you're going to do a 2400 or a 2600 engine, you want the 2-liter rod. If you're using a 1.7 or a 1.8 liter, you've only got 66 millimeters of stroke, and even if you add a 100 millimeter or 103 millimeter bore, you're only going to wind up with, I think it's roughly 2200 cc's, which torque-wise is going to be comparable to what a 2180 does for 30 pounds more weight. So it's kind of a, you know.
82 millimeter stroke and a 90.5 on the barrel. What's the valve size? Generally, a good way to go with that.
Well, with our own experience, unlike yours, we have found that the stock valve size actually works about the best in the slow-turning motor.
What about remotely mounting an oil filter? Is that really...
Remotely mounting oil filters, I personally usually try to talk people out of doing it. There's nothing wrong with an oil filter yet. Those that increase the bearing life and all that, but by the same token, if you look from a historical standpoint of view, not only from Volkswagens, how many Volkswagens were produced without oil filters? They work. And how many, just like your old Continental, Lycomings, like I have in my airplane, it's the old 235 C1B, doesn't have an oil filter on it either. There's a zillion of them out there too, so you just change the oil, and if there's big chunks, that's what the screen does. You know? Yep.
I was wondering about carburetors.
Mhm.
I hear bad stuff about Postas. I've got a RevMaster, and that's what came with it. And on the other hand, I hear how good Elephants are, but the price is kind of harsh. Is there anything in between, or what do you guys recommend?
Well, you know, when it comes to Posta carburetors, you're going to find two groups of people, those that love them and those that hate them. And I can quite honestly say, at least in my experience, those that hate them generally just have not taken... Their frustration level has gotten higher faster than their learning curve has. And because once you get the carburetor set up, I had one of my airplanes for 12 years. It took me probably, back in the early 70s, I bet 3 months to finally get that light bulb turned on to figure out, you know, what it needed to do to make it to work. But it, after 12 years, all I did about once every 2 years was replace a little piece of plastic something in there. I don't know what it's even called. And that's it. I mean, it ran the same all the time. It never missed a beat. And you replaced that piece of plastic. I thought it was a great carburetor.
Does that still extend to your new Type 1 engine with Posta?
Posta is no longer manufactured, to my knowledge. Moser Motor were the sellers of it. And when they went, well, even before they went out of business, you couldn't buy them from them anymore. They were using the Ellison throttle body, and they also used the Ruffalo by RevMaster anymore. Yeah, that's the carburetors they used. They ran out of castings, from what I understand. They didn't have any more casts. Yeah. Feeling on scat heads versus stock heads. I think scat heads are a pretty good product. However, there again, I guess my feeling is kind of like the RevMaster 75 horsepower heads, that I'm not willing to spend the extra, probably close to $1,200 anymore by the time you buy everything for additional 3 to 5 horsepower. Yeah. I mean, you know, they work fine and everything. There's no problem with them. But I'm just not, in my own pocketbook, the expense isn't worth the gain. Back to your carburetor question, however. There are other carburetors available. We ourselves, for about the last 4 years, have been using Bennett Zenith carburetors. And they're just a little float bowl. It's called the L carburetor. It's a updraft carburetor, but the air enters the front of the carburetor and then exits the carburetor vertically. And it's a little bit larger carburetor than what the Posse is, or the Ellison throttle body, as far as the vertical height of it. So they take a little more room to install, but they work very well. And it's just, I mean, it's like a model, it is actually a Model A type carburetor. I mean, there's just nothing in it really that can go wrong and screw up hardly at all.
Again, the name of that,
Oh, there's Zenith.
Zenith?
Yeah. Bennett Zenith, or Zenith Fuel Systems in Bristol, Virginia. You can't buy one from them. You have to go through a dealer. They're available in from 16 millimeter clear up through 30.
Which one do you use?
We use 28. Yep. Yeah.
People using swirl plates in the intake manifold, should I swirl left or right?
Well, most of the people here using swirl plates are using a post-injector type carburetor, and what they find, which is usually kind of interesting, is that one cylinder side runs richer than the other, and that's probably true. But by the same token, if you've ever played around with V6s and V8s that are carbureted, and you're rebuilding a motor, you'll see that the back bank of cylinders are usually kind of brown, and the ones closest to the carburetor are kind of wet. And it's the same thing with the car. I mean, that's why they made fuel injection, and it's the bottom line. If the engines weren't so accessible, we wouldn't be doing all this playing with them to find out that, gee, this is running rich and that's lean, and trying to fix it, for the most part. There's sometimes other reasons that are into it, and sometimes it really does need something done because the engine does run so rich or so lean, and they need to get gas one side or the other. But I guess my overall experience with swirl plates is usually like a last thing. It's not really the fix. It's not solving the problem. It's a fix for a problem, but the problem still exists. Yeah. Yeah.
That Zenith carburetor, now there's a needle valve on the bottom now. Is that adjustable for your leaning and making it rich?
Yeah, the Zenith carburetor is in-flight adjustable if you hook something up to it. You have to rotate it clockwise and counterclockwise versus push-pull. Yeah. Yeah, some guys do. Honestly, though, most guys that use the carburetor, they set it because, I guess realistically, most of our flying's done in below 5,000 feet, that kind of thing. It's kind of like, why bother sometimes? Yeah.
What's the problem in putting the oil filter on the firewall?
Problem putting an oil filter on fire? There is no problem doing it.
Now, the reason I ask is, the engine, I got a good deal on the engine I bought, and the oil filter is incompatible with my cow. So I had to take it off, and I'm going to have to put the firewall.
Okay. Do it. If you want to use it. Yeah. Now, the only thing you have to watch when you put an oil filter on the firewall is, A, be sure you use the correct filters, because Fram has one that's an HP1. I'm not even sure they make it anymore. They have another one that superseded it. That's a high pressure compatible filter, because you can actually, if you mount it directly on the firewall and you take the pressure off your pump going to the filter, you're putting high pressure directly on the filter, and it makes one hell of a mess sometimes if you don't have the right filter. It'll just literally blow it up. Yeah. Yeah.
Cracking around the front area, multiple cracks.
Symptoms you'll see is reduced oil pressure first. On the RevMaster, if you crack the case, it's usually oil pressure that starts to go down, or you find an oil leak and you just can't figure out where it's coming from. But the first place to look is right up by the right front cylinder area. That's where they crack at. Yeah.
What about electronic fuel injection?
Sorry?
Electronic fuel injection?
Electronic fuel injection. I myself have very limited experience with fuel injection on the motors. There's a company in Mundelein, Illinois that we were working with at one time for it. But there again, the biggest problem with fuel injection is it gets back to why are we using a Volkswagen? Most of us are using it because it's supposed to be a relatively inexpensive alternative to an aircraft engine. You add fuel injection to the motor, the aftermarket fuel injection, you're going to have probably at least $1,200 in it.
You've never used a Volkswagen, like the 1600 used to be fuel.
No, I've never used one that's fuel injection, no. Yeah, it works great. I know the new Mosler Motors Total Engine Concepts, they just got done trying, what's the company in South Carolina?
Airflow performance.
Airflow Performance. They just got done trying it on theirs. And
Well, it's a super unit for the Volkswagen, that airflow performance.
they said it worked great. So, I mean, but, you know, it's $1,200. Yeah. You know, it's going to produce more horsepower. You're going to have even cylinders as far as what you won't need swirl plate anymore. But it's all a trade-off, you know, of what you want to spend versus what you want. And most of us usually want to spend the least amount and get the most.
You still offer the builders program where you can come in and...
Question, do we still offer the partnership program? And the answer is no. When we moved to Nebraska from Chicago, we just don't have the place to do it anymore. Yep.
For making the intake system, is it sensitive to fuel distribution, or just need to provide the airflow?
Well, actually, you know, if you look on most intake systems, even on, I was noticing on Continental's new, what's the new motor they're trying to push that's cheaper? IO 240 thing. It looks exactly like a Sonorai intake manifold.
Sometimes there's more than what you see there.
I know there is, but I mean, if you look at it, it looks just like a Sonorai intake manifold. And even if you look on a lot of aircraft, from Lycoming and Continental, a lot of it has to do with what fits. And by gosh and by golly. And, yep.
Getting from the carburetor where you split off and
It's, I'm sure somewhere there's a formula for it. It's not one I have. And that's why they have dynos and guys that run them, you know, because they get to play with that neat stuff all day long. It's beyond what I have the resources to do. Yeah?
Steve, on a Type 4 2400cc, what would the horsepower rating be?
Roughly 80. Yeah.
The 2600?
2600 is about 90. It's at 3400. Anything else? Yeah.
On the Redmaster, what's the maximum cruise RPM you recommend?
I think RevMaster limits them to 2900. I think it more has to do with the magneto than anything. If you're using the dual mag, yeah. The engine can obviously turn faster, but the Bendix dual mag, I think, is the limitation, which is why they limit them to 2900.
The original ones, they have 3400.
34, that was a single mag though, wasn't it?
No, dual.
Was it?
Single drive to the
Single drive? Okay.
What's the difference there?
I don't know. Be a RevMaster question. I don't know what the difference is. The D3000 mag, I do know if you need to replace one right now, you're going to pay a lot for that. Here, big bucks. So best to have it rebuild if it's rebuildable. Yeah.
On the Type 4 engines, again, there are two options. I could either buy one directly from you and say, just send me a Type 4 engine, or I could go to Junkyard and find a core and send it to you and have you fix it. What's the most I should pay for a core then?
I'd say an average core price is going to be somewhere between $100 and $300. If it's a non-running motor. If it's a running motor, they'll probably want more than that. If it's just something sitting there that turns over, that doesn't run when you're there to buy it, that's reasonable, somewhere in that range. The newer the motor, the more you're going to pay for it. Or if it's an older motor with known mileage, you know, you just have to weigh it.
It's going to cost about how much for you to
Depends upon what size motor you want. No, if you wanted us to do a 2600 out of a core like that, you would probably have, if you wanted us to build a motor, you'd have about 62, 63 in it, yeah. Yeah. Pardon? For the dual mag? Yeah, I knew they were up there. Yeah. Yeah.
What's your out of the door price? You might have just said I wasn't real sure, but your out of the door price is 2,600.
They're 68
Is that with or without, or
without.
does that include the electronic ignition, or
That'd be single ignition.
can you add that on the dual?
Yeah, dual ignition on any motor runs about 550.
Does that include carburetor?
Huh? You have layaway. Haven't we all learned that with companies dealing in sport aviation, you don't want layaway?
Reuse any of those components at all?
When you get a Type 4 motor, all you really keep off of it is the case, the heads, the hardware, studs, cylinder heads, oil pump, connecting rods.
So pretty much you get
But don't throw anything away,
yeah,
especially in the hardware department.
expensive stuff.
Yeah, camshaft you're going to replace, lifters you're going to replace, the bearings, all that kind of stuff, but don't throw the hardware away. There's the case through bolts, there again, if you have to buy some, you got to go to your Volkswagen dealer and find somebody that even knows what you want and have them ordered, because they're not available through the aftermarket. Yeah. The intake on the Type 4, because there again, it's kind of like the Subaru motor we were talking about. There's not wide use on it. What we have for it on the Type 4, we have a stub exhaust kit that bolts onto the cylinder head that has the flange welded on the bottom, and you've actually got to finish what you want to do with it. And it's pretty much the same with the intake manifold. We make the parts that go on the cylinder head, so that's kind of a difficult weldment to make. But the rest of it is just 90-degree pipe fittings and whatever you want to, how you want to hang the carburetor or where you want to hang the carburetor. That you pretty much have to do on installation when you install it in your airplane. Yeah. Today, the Type 4s we have are all installed in, we've got a couple in Sonorise. We've got, I think, one in a Zen Air Zodiac 600. We've got 3 of them in KR2s and 1 in a KR1. That's a real rocket.
What do you think about the drop-in hydraulic lifters?
The drop-in? For what?
The Type 1.
And I'm not a big fan of them. I've seen where they break. The drop-in lifters, they work. Some guys, they work fine on, but the drop-in lifter, really what it is, it's the ones I've seen that are sold, it's a scat-type lifter. They machine the insides out so you can stick Chevrolet 350 parts in it, 265 to 350 parts in it. What that does, it makes the wall really, really thin for the lifter. It's a lot of pressure to handle for a very thin wall. They work. A lot of guys use them in cars. I have personal knowledge of them, though, breaking in airplanes. So, if I were going to use hydraulics in a Type 1, I would probably use the machine fit variety versus the drop-in. I can't say